Hello listeners, I'm delighted to welcome you to another engaging episode of our program Inflation Dynamics and Economic Development on Amorgate Radio Communications. I remain your host, Titilola Ogushono. I'm excited to introduce a special guest to you on the program today. He's an economics expert with in-depth expertise in areas of energy and natural resources economics. He is a senior lecturer in the Department of Economics, Lagos State University, with over 15 years experience. He has written over 40 research papers in areas of energy economics, financial economics, petroleum economics, agricultural economics, and environment economics, which have been published in highly rated journals. I can go on and on to talk about the special guest of mine. He is in none other than Dr. Kehinde Olusegun Atoyebi. So with Dr. Atoyebi today, we will be discussing inflation dynamics in developing nations, taking a case study of Nigeria. Dr. Atoyebi, thank you so much for joining us today on our program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay.
For inviting this an opportunity to express my candid view or candid opinion as regards to the general situations of inflation in Nigeria. The word inflation per se is actually a persistent or intermittent continual rise in the general price level of goods and services. And when we actually look at the pioneer of inflation, we have the authority of Milton Friedman in the 30s or the 40s. The inflation is not a new concept. It is everywhere phenomenon. What are we trying to say is that all economies of the world experience inflation, but the minimum standard rate of inflation that a country should experience to be the maximum should be 3%. Once it's above 3%, then there are some other factors which might actually cause it. Nigeria is not exceptional in the area of inflation. Nigeria actually is not experiencing inflation per se, but stagflation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kenny Atoyebi, for that powerful introduction. Well, listeners, you are in for a roller coaster with Dr. Atoyebi. He's full of so much experience. He's passionate about the subject matter, and you're going to have a whole lot to learn. Just like he said, Nigerian headline inflation rate, rose to about 34.1% in June 2024. In fact, the general inflation rate in Nigeria is 25.5%. And from what Dr. Atoyebi has said, what is it's comfortable, what is recommended for any nation is that the inflationary rate should not be more than 3%, creeping inflation. That is when it's going to have positive impact on the economy, because we need that kind of mild inflation rate, because that would encourage producers to, produce more, even investors to come into the economy. But the case of Nigeria, that's why we're going to be studying that inflation pattern in Nigeria more critically on today's episode. So Dr. Atoyebi is going to take me to my first question. Will you thank you once again for that powerful introduction? So my first question, Dr. Atoyebi, to you today is that the inflation inherent in any economy, according to economics, can be classified either according to its causes or the rates of inflation. According to the causes, it could be demand pull inflation, cost push inflation, structural inflation, among others. Well, in the case of Nigeria, because we are looking at Nigeria as a case study for other developing nations, what type of inflation would you say that the nation is currently grappling with?
Thank you so much, Dr. Titi Abare, for inviting me for this episode. Nigeria, as a developing nation, or nearly all a giant of Africa, not actually experiencing a single inflation per se, but stagflation.
Okay, stagflation.
What is stagflation?
Okay.
In essence, stagflation is lack of robust economic growth coupled with hyperinflation. You can see that high rate of unemployment, alongside with what? With persistent or general rise in the price of goods and services. And you can see that this one is actually a deviation from Philip Cobb, because inflation and unemployment are evils. But inflation itself is a necessary evil. But the issue there is that looking at the monetary side of inflation, as in the control and management of inflation,
Okay.
control either through the supply driven or demand driven. But look at Nigeria in particular, it's a supply driven inflation.
Okay.
The reason is that Nigeria is a monocultural economy.
Monocultural economy.
It depends only on petroleum. And you realize that you find out that we are actually a consuming nation, but we're not producing anything. So definitely you experience high inflation at any point in time, and there are so many reasons for that. One, when you look at the food inflations that we are currently experiencing now under the supply-driven inflations, you find out that the looking at the peculiar characteristics of Nigeria, that is divided into about 6 geopolitical zones. You know, we have some peculiar regions that deal with agriculture, that is more into agriculture, like the north central, the northwest, and the northeast. But we realize that they are facing a lot of boundary attacks. That find it difficult to even go into farms, and therefore this is actually sorting the food agricultural produce. Which is having a massive effect on the general populace. And apart from that, you know, when there is high or persistent general price, the price of goods and services, as I really actually said in the initial that Nigeria is a monocultural country that depends solely on petroleum. Any hike in petroleum price is bound to lead to what we call general equilibrium effect. General equilibrium effect.
Will you want to break that down for us, Dr. Atoyebi?
When we are talking about the general equilibrium effect, it's like when you look at a particular product, you look at the hike in that product, the price of that product, and what effect does it actually have on the general market, spontaneously or simultaneously? And since because Nigeria we only diversify our economy on paper, but rather not on the real sector. So therefore, any attempt for increase in the price of that PMS, which is petroleum product gasoline, is going to have a spiral effect on all other commodities like tomato, pepper, transportation, and so many, and going to have a very worse effect on civil servants, on workers, on the populace, on the massive, the rural economy, the urban economy, and the like. So you can see that what we are experiencing is not inflation per se, but the stagflation, because the bundle of persistent rise in inflation, hyperinflation, and high rate of unemployment. Graduates have been turning out every year without work, no industry, no power. So you can see a lot of problems are facing this economy.
Thank you so much for Dr. Atoyebi. That is a whole lot. According to Dr. Atoyebi's position, well, you can talk about the supply side, you can talk about the cost to flat inflation, you know, the imported and all of the structural bottlenecks, inflation. But Dr. Atoyebi's position is that what is happening in Nigeria is even worse than that. It's a case of stagflation. You know, it's a combination of high rates of inflation coupled with high rates of unemployment, because economists believe in the Phillips curve, who tell you that there's an inverse relationship, you know, between high rates of inflation and rates of unemployment. When one is high, we expect that the rate of unemployment will be low. But in the case of Nigeria, we have both. You know, that's why we are feeling the heat intensely in Nigeria, that we have a case of high rates of inflation and high rates of unemployment. Okay, and Dr. Atoyebi has also mentioned, like you said, that it is a supply-driven, you know, supply side, and is a monocultural economy. You know, that is when we have so much dependence on one sector, so that any hike in price in that sector would have spiral, with borrowing your word, Dr. Atoye, the spiral effect on the economy. I always say multiplier effect, but I like that. I think I'll change it to your word now. Dr. Atoye, there's a spiral effect on the economy. And I like what you said again. You said that, that yes, on paper, we talk about diversification of the economy, but in reality, have we actually diversified our economy? Are we sure that other sectors too are growing? And I will say something in economics that if you do not have sectoral balance, that is having all sectors growing at the same pace, economic growth would not lead to economic development. Thank you so much, Dr. Atoye, for those, expository, informative remarks that you have just given to us. Dear listeners, I told you that Dr. Atoye is going to be very interesting, is going to be very informative and expository. We're just starting. I have a follow-up question for you, sir. Okay, in terms of countries experiencing stagflation, would you say it's peculiar to Nigeria alone, or are there other developing or African countries experiencing stagflation?
Thank you so much, Dr. Tilola Ogunsono. Concerning your questions, as I initially said, inflation is everywhere.
Okay.
That is, according to Milton Friedman, who is an authority in this field, is everywhere phenomenon. If you look at the case of Sub-Saharan Africa, we have the Sub-Saharan Africa is comprises of nothing less than 54 countries and is divided into blocks. You have the Western Bloc, the Eastern Bloc, the Southern Bloc, and the Central Bloc. So if you look at the West Africa per se, which Nigeria is one, almost all the countries in West Africa, like Nigeria, Ghana, Sierra Leone, Togo, Benin Republic, Chad, and all that, they are experiencing the same inflations and unemployment, and that is called combinations of the two is known as stagflation. It means that there is an high rate of unemployment and also a persistent rise in inflation. For instance, even some of these countries we mentioned still depend on Nigeria, because Nigeria is regarded as giant of Africa. But the only problem that Nigeria is having is that we have these resources, but we don't know how to harness these resources so as to accommodate the teeming populations. For instance, let's look at the advent of petroleum in Nigeria in 1956 at Olobiri.
Okay.
This petroleum became a commercial quantity in 1958. But even before the advent of petroleum, Nigeria has been surviving because we realize that we have 6 geopolitical zones in Nigeria: the northwest, the northeast, the north central, the southwest, the south, and the southeast. But in those days, when we have 3 regions, we have the northern region, the southern region, and the western region. You find out that the petroleum was not in vogue then, but yet every region has its own advantage. Unlike West has the advantage of cocoa productions, the North has the advantage of groundnut pyramid, while the East has the advantage of production of palm oil. But you find out that there were a kind of competitive development in those regions
among the
contemporary time. But the advent of petroleum actually made us to deviate from the predominant occupation in Nigeria, which is agriculture. And that is why we are having this kind of problem. Because if agriculture being a predominant occupation in Nigeria has been in focus, you understand? You find out that Nigeria will now be in this kind of a situation. And successive government, you find out that I always say they want to diversify the economy without any policy framework, such as trying to encroach or amass land in each state, so that you can develop this land, produce, and allow these young graduates that have been turning out every year to occupy, pay salary to them, so that things will change. But we find out that some of the problems that Nigeria is actually facing the same situation that is happening here is also happening in some of these West African countries like Ghana, Chad, and all that. And you can even see the recent Mali junta in the recent takeover in Mali. You find out that because the people are impoverished, nothing is working, and that is why the military has to take over, the guards have to take over because they feel they are not enjoying anything. The populace are failed, cheated, and the political elites are amassing wealth for themselves. And you find that the gap between the rich and the poor continue to get wider, while the poor become poorer. And you can see that actually illustrates Guinea coefficient curve. So you can see that general situation applies to West Africa and some other sub-Saharan African countries, especially majorly West Africa and East Africa.
So can we say that this is a West Africa and East African typical problem, the issue of inflation, because it's more...
Southern African is better off. You know, we have some countries are better, like Mauritius.
Okay,
like
true.
Gabon, are very good. In fact, you find that the index of corruption is very low over there.
In those countries?
Ghana and all that, the index of corruption is very high. Corruption is even being partially being legalized here. People celebrate people that are into corrupt practices.
Very sad.
It's actually a country that wants to grow. We have a zero tolerance corruption.
Thank you so much, Dr. Atoyebi. If you are just joining us, we have Dr. Kehinde Atoyebi with us today. He's an economics expert, with so much in-depth experience in terms of natural resources, economics, petroleum, economic issues, financial economics, environmental economics, and the likes of it. Okay, and Dr. Atoyebi has answered that yes, when you talk about other countries that are experiencing stagflation like the one we are experiencing in Nigeria, we have sub-Saharan countries actually having that more for the West and the East. Is that not it, Dr. Atoyebi? But we have some like Mauritius, Gabon not experiencing stagflation. And I'm sure that is going to, some other episode, we'd like to consider what have they gotten right. Okay, Mauritius is an African country. Gabon is an African country. So what are they doing that we are not doing? Because if you look at the level of poverty too in Nigeria, which is typical in Nigeria, like over 60%, Dr. Atoyebi, of people, we are living in multi-dimensional poverty level in Nigeria. That's pretty high. Very high, okay? So, and we also have high level of income inequality in Nigeria, whereas in places like Luxembourg, okay, we have very low disparity between the rich and the poor, and that accounts for how rich they are. You look at their GDP per capita income, very high. So such a country definitely to reflect on that level of development. Thank you so much, Dr. Atoyebi. As usual, knowing you so well for your in-depth practical analysis so that even non-economists can learn from.
Thank you.
This leads me to my next question, Dr. Atoyebi. Some experts have opined that the inflationary pressure faced in Nigeria presently is majorly as a result of fuel subsidy removal by the present administration. How would you assess the situation?
Thank you, ma'am. Actually, fuel subsidy removal is good. It's not actually bad. But because it is an aid given by the government to actually cost the cost of production, and by cutting the cost of production or reducing cost of production, you will actually have a kind of positive impact on the populace. Okay. But for these fuel subsidies to have been removed, the deviation, the violation that the government has actually made is that there are some apparatus or ingredients must have been put in place. Okay. For instance, if you look at California has 32 refineries. 32. Nigeria has 4 refineries, existing refineries, but none is working. So, if you go around the whole globe, you refinery in the US, in Russia, that even one of the major producer of oil in the world, still give fuel subsidies. Russia, yes, still pay fuel subsidies. So removal of fuel subsidy at the time the government did it is very, very wrong. The reason that there was no refinery, or there is refinery, but the refineries are not working at full capacity, and therefore there would have been no need for fuel subsidy, because the only thing that people enjoy is the payment of fuel subsidy, because the reason is that it will reduce the cost of borrowing. And if you see what is going on now, you find that everything has actually they have spiral effects. Even to the extent that those who don't have cars, motor and everything, they are even trying to sell it off now, because you cannot afford to buy a liter of petrol at a rate of 1,200. Even the CNG, which is an alternative source, that the government is saying is very costly and very expensive for the common populace. So the issue of fuel subsidy is not that it's not good, but the time it was done at the right.
So you're saying that the removal of the fuel subsidy was untimely?
It was untimely.
Will you tell me it's sensitive? Will you call it insensitive?
Because probably the government does not actually understand the working of the economy, because the working of the economy is that for you to remove fuel subsidy in order to actually reduce the cost of governance, or the cost of governance, especially in the logic or the argument by the government is that some of these fuel subsidies are being paid to importers of petroleum or marketers, and that is actually draining the national budget, which is actually true. But the issue is that the refineries that the government is supposed to embark on are actually not working, and petrol are being imported outside. Now, but you remove fuel subsidy now, and the refineries are not working. Even when we have the private refinery too is even subjected to the National Petroleum Company, which is the NNPC. So it means that there's a kind of we call it game theory, or conspiracy theory within that circle, and that is the reason why that at the time government removed that fuel subsidies was an e-time, because the government actually did not realize or did not emphasize the relative or the likely impacts on the general public, even though the government still went ahead after removing fuel subsidies to even introduce some palliative to civil workers, which is a welcome development. But yes, the hike in petroleum price, as I really said earlier, that Nigeria depends only on petroleum, and any hike in this PMS, since there is no alternative, is going to have a kind of spiral effect on all other commodities, and that general equilibrium effect anyway. And the fact that the government also introduced no palliative, the palliative does not actually seem to have impact, because the file remains the same. It even leads to some of these workers having what we call money illusions, because the spiral effect that it has on transportation and all other things is eroding what government has actually brought. It means that the workers' living standards still remain the same.
Or even worse. Even worse. Okay, and I like what you said just now, Dr. Atoyebi. For those who don't know what that is, when you talk about money illusion, we want to break it down for them further. What does it mean, money illusion?
Money illusion is that when workers or the unions or the union collectively bargaining or trying to emphasize for increase in wages, in line with Keynes' theory, that's John Maynard Keynes. In line with John Keynes about the money illusions, money illusion is just when workers emphasize on increase in wages. And really, we have what called Keynes price or wages flexibility, because the workers, because of the activities of the union, the wages cannot be reduced or cannot be cut. Therefore, if wages of workers are increased, and because of what we call rational expectation theory, workers will think they are better off when wages are increased, not thinking about this spiral inflation, because the inflation, which is persistent rising inflation, especially when you have hyperinflation. The hyperinflation will actually erode the purchasing power of the workers, and workers will remain the same, even if not worse off. And that's what we mean by money.
Thank you so much, Dr. Atoye, for breaking down that concept. Yes. So anytime you have an increase in your wage rate or salaries, before you jubilate that, oh, thank goodness, I have an increase, 30% increase in my salary. Please find out what exactly is the prevalent inflation rate. Because if you are not careful, the purchasing power, what that money we're able to buy when your salary or wage rate was not prior to the increase, you're not able to purchase it. So before we judge and say, oh, thank goodness, thank you, that we have spoken money illusion, talking about the amount that you have in your hands, amount of the percentage of increase, without looking at the real value, the purchasing value of the money at hand. So please start thinking of inflation. That's what inflation can do. I told you that Dr. Atoye is a whole lot, dimensions, he has a lot of depth and breadth, on the subject matter, economic matters, and I look forward to learning more, even myself, from him, okay? But this is all we can take on today's episode. Thank you so much, Dr. Atoye. I can't thank you enough for, out of your time, tight schedule, finding time to join us on this episode. Now, we can take, there are other questions definitely we want to find out from you, to share from your, learn from your expertise, robust experience. I hope that you want to join us, next episode, next week, okay, to discuss further. Dr. Atoye.
Thank you so much.
Hope you join us next. Okay, so that is a yes from Dr. Atoye saying yes, he's going to join us next episode. So, dear listeners, a whole lot to learn from Dr. Atoye. I would like to draw the curtain here. Big thank you to everyone who joined us from the beginning of today's episode to the end. I hope that you join us next Friday, 5 p.m. WAT. Also, remember that we have other insightful, engaging, robust, expository episode programs that run from Mondays to Fridays. Okay, I have my colleagues. You would enjoy each and every one of those programs. And remember, the time is 5 p.m. WAT at Amorgate. Remember that we have you covered for your consulting needs, for your communication needs, your training needs, your strategy needs. We have you covered. If you want to learn more about us, you can visit our website at www.theamorgate.org. Remember that the reason why we bring up these programs is because of you. That's why we are here. So if you have any feedback, questions for us, or there are other areas you want us to look on to look at more intensely, please just send those feedback to us at our mailing address, contact@theamorgate.org. I'll take it again. The mail to send your feedback, questions, comments to is contact@theamorgate.org. And definitely now I will not leave you without a quote. And my quote for the week is that of Ronald Reagan. Okay, which says that inflation is as violent as a mugger, as frightening as an armed robber, and as deadly as a hitman. Oh God, that is what inflation is, according to Ronald Reagan. Okay, I wish you a blessed and fruitful weekend, and I hope that you join me sometime. Like I said, same station, Amorgate Radio Communications, 5 p.m. It's me saying bye from here. I remain Titilola Ogunshona.